Ricci and I only met maybe a year before the pandemic happened, and we became friends very, very quickly.
Quick.
And then in the pandemic, we continue to do a lot of virtual stuff together, virtual shows together. We just we're constantly each other's champions, kind of like pushing each other to keep going in comedy and writing and doing things. And then I always said this about Seattle comedy in the pandemic. It was going to flush out the bad people who aren't dedicated and don't want to succeed in comedy, but the ones who are good and want to continue to do this will come up on top when it's over. And it is. And you can see that in Seattle right now. There's so many amazing independent shows popping up.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many, there's more talent than I've ever seen. And there's a lot of people starting for the first time who will eventually get really good. But I always knew that Ricci would continue and I mean, you too, Adam. You're still performing just like you were before.
Yeah, I'm just stoked because it feels like exactly what you said. All those people that were not really in it for the right reasons, I guess is probably the right way to put it. I can say that really shitty, or I can say it kind of nice. There just was this injection of people that were passionate about comedy and then taking it seriously and then supporting one another. I mean, all of us are. There's not a lot of.
You can say it. We're friends.
We are. I mean, it's. But when I came into Seattle comedy, it was not that way. It was just very divisive, and you're with this group or that group, and
I was literally just telling Joe this too. That I enjoy the fact that there's community here. We all kind of know each other and we're all friends with each other. Even the different tiers of what you're capable of. We all kind of intermingle to some degree, and I like that.
Yeah. You were just in New York. Because my experience in New York was kind of the opposite of that.
So when I was in New York, I felt the same way. I was it's no one here knows each other. No one wants to talk to each other. They didn't do the fist bump thing in between people going on stage. And I was that's fucking weird. And I remember Jamal went up and he was I put my fist up to that guy and he just saw it and he ignored it. And
really?
Yeah. And I was that's crazy. But New York gave me an appreciation for what we have here in Seattle.
Yeah, I definitely feel the same. But it's a different culture there. I think once you're established, it's way different. At least I had Wilfred Padua talking about it. And he's I'm friends with some of the funniest people in the world. And I think once you're really in New York, because you have friends out there. I'm sure your experience, it's different when you're at those lower level shows versus you did fucking Caroline's, right?
Yeah. I mean, the difference between to say what kind of a little bit of devil's advocate is I love that about New York, and I think Seattle needs more of it because one of the things that we do here is it's way too. Everybody has a shot. Everybody gets stage time. Everybody has a chance, and New York is prove it. You can have a minimal stage time until you prove that you can get more. And here it's you'll do your first 3 minutes and then next thing you know, you have 15 minutes on a 5-person showcase. And I'm I'm so sorry, you will get good, but right now you're bad.
Yeah.
And you need to earn that spot, which is what New York does. Now the camaraderie and the community and the things that we do have here in Seattle, great.
But why can't we have both? Why can't we have that
Girl.
We can all be friends, but learn to do a tight 15.
Yes. I just think Seattle needs to be a little bit more realistic with
Yes.
where you're at in comedy and what it takes to get to the next step, because we're not.
I will say,
am.
I say that I will say I agree with Joe on that part too. I do think that there's a lot of that in Seattle where it's you're brand new and you're you meet all these check boxes, you should do this show. And it's okay, I guess.
Remember when you guys were in that writing group?
Yes.
I will say this. Things like that, you're working to get better. So people who are doing things like that will naturally get better. They're dedicated, give them more time. But I'm done seeing an open micer next time they do a show, have it be 15 minutes.
I just think that get good and put talent first. I feel that's the big thing is can you prove that you're funny before you get on a showcase?
It's a tricky thing though. I hear what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying, but at the same time, I was a recipient of that, and I'm now at a place where I did shows at the Stand in New York versus indie shows and everything. There was not a show where I was oh, this is way more than I can do, and I was fucking Norman, Ari Shaffir, Nick Mullen. I followed those guys, and like I never would have been prepared for the amount of time I've been doing comedy, for the experience, and like I've been very lucky. I think it's what you do with those resources. Like if you say you are brand new and you did 3 minutes and then you just sit on that 3 and don't do anything to get better, that's a much different thing than like the person that's like out every night fucking trying to like be a part of the community. Like what they've done with Parlor Tricks, like
I know
it's incredible. And that's such a different thing than like somebody just like, now I'm a comedian. Like I did 3
leave
minutes.
with talent first. This is the other thing too. It's like, okay, New York, you know, if you're going to a comedy show and you're paying for that ticket, it's most likely going to be good. You know that in New York, that's the culture. Here, if we keep putting up and allowing bad shows to happen, we're not training Seattle that we have talent, that comedy in Seattle is great, which it is. We have a lot of really great comedians who need to be on stage more. But if we keep inviting the city to our shows and they're going to a show and it's bad, they're gonna not come back and they're gonna be like, Seattle's comedy is not great. But if we take the initiative to lead with talent first, then we will create that culture of when you come to a comedy show in Seattle, it's going to be good, it's going to be fun, you're going to have a great time, and then people bring people, and now it's a thing.
And it would help with the audience having like a better understanding of this is comedy too. Like right now, Seattle audiences come in and everybody has their concept of what comedy is. And it makes it hard to be yourself on stage. Like there's a tendency for a lot of people to like, oh, I need to play to these Seattle audiences and shit. Whereas in New York, it's like, this is me. And if you don't like me, I'm not like, this is who I am. Whereas in Seattle, it's more like, okay, I'm going to start catering my act to this region, and then you get outside that region, it doesn't work for shit.
Right.
Did you have that issue in Chicago and New York? Because like when I was in Chicago and New York, I did some jokes where I'm like, oh, this is definitely like a regional thing, like where it like didn't hit the way that it was supposed to. And I was like, oh, wait a second, this might just be something that I accidentally did. I didn't know that I was catering to the Seattle audience.
Exactly. I mean, you with touring too, I'm sure there's stuff where like that's what helps so much with like working across states is you're thinking about your material differently.
Oh yeah, and like you notice it immediately. Like in some cities, they will be like so down to mess around with this one joke, but you'll do it in like San Francisco, and they're like, maybe not this time.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just in Central Washington this week, and I went up. And it was a show, like I knew the show wasn't going to be like the best show I've ever done, but I was like, okay, I'm going to go out there, do 20 minutes, like stretch, get in front of an audience I don't normally do. And I go up there and it's like half the audience was wearing like Korean war hats.
Oh, beautiful.
And I'm like, this isn't the audience I want to perform for. You know, like it's not my preference to be at like an Eagles club or like a American Legion or whatever, but like I'm not
at the Eagle. What?
Oh my God.
I know. I keep going.
We'll train you later.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I need to know more of that. But it was like Make America Great Again convention there, basically.
Yeah.
And
they looked at you and they were probably like, yeah.
They exactly like they're like, I like what
come on,
they
boys.
were like blue eyes, shaved head.
Yeah,
let's get it, boy.
That mouth.
Where are you leading us?
Show us that big old revolver, motherfucker. Show us that. That was what happened. Here's the thing, though. I'll say this. You never know who's going to be a fan.
Oh, yeah.
That's why I love to perform for audiences who I'm like, this probably isn't my demographic. My Caroline's show, first night Thursday. Thursdays are a hard show. Front row. Okay, my demo is millennial moms. You come to my show, it's a sea of millennial moms. A lot of them are doing mom's night out. A lot of them are doing, we're away from our husbands. It's time to get liver failure. Front row, full table, 7 Wall Street bros. I'm talking ties loosened, fucking whiskey straight.
Coke in the pocket.
Oh, for sure. Just like perfectly coiffed hair, good looking Wall Street bros. And I'm like, you have to break them immediately or you'll lose them. So the first thing I said when I went out on stage, I was like, so who the fuck are you? And they just died. And I was like, have you guys looked around? You don't fit in here. Let's get down to it. Sat down at the table, interviewed them all. Just crowd work the fuck out of it.
Yeah.
That show was just about over a month ago, maybe 2 months ago now. One of them wrote me yesterday and they were like, we were the Wall Street Bros and we will be fans for life. And I'm like, that's what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
Because you don't know who's going to be a fan. You can't like judge them. So even though like you went into that environment too, like if I went into that environment, I'd be shitting my pants for sure. But like, one of those guys like sucked a little dick back in the day and he would fucking roll with Mr. D's gay shit. Yeah, what is on my
you
face?
have like shit swinging
my
around your
beard
face.
is literally
I thought
Velcro.
that was a fly.
Wasn't a fly. It was just my...
But isn't it like more rewarding to get that table? Like,
Yeah,
more than because you can get your fans.
It was the most rewarding thing. I gotta tell you guys this. Richie's been watching me work on this joke. I do this new joke about guns in schools, which is dicey.
Oh yeah,
It's so good because like it's an important joke for me. It's like the message behind it is how fucked up what's happening is, right? Somebody wrote me 2 or 3 days ago, and they were like, they saw my show in Philly, which was last weekend, and they said, your guns in schools joke was so smart, needed to be said, and also hilarious. Well done. And I was like, I'm gonna fucking cry. I was like, that's all I wanted. Like this is the joke. You get it. And I was like, hell yeah.
that feeling of like it's so. That's worth more than like money, of any kind.
Well, let's not get fucking ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
Baby's trying to pay the mortgage.
That feeling's not paying my rent. Yeah.
Right.